The safari through the deserts of Africa has been an adventure. I wonder if I'm going to see any animals soon. That would be pretty cool. Hey, what was that? Wah! Oh, you scared me.
Oh, sorry.
What kind of animal are you?
I'm an African wild donkey.
How do you survive in this barren desert? What do you eat?
I could answer all of those questions and tell you a lot more about our species. Let's take a look. Our scientific name is Equus africanus, but we're more commonly known as the African wild donkey. There are many ways that we've adapted to survive in the wild.
Do you think you could give me some examples?
Sure, one thing that helps us wild donkeys survive is our ability to communicate with each other by making loud noises through our throats. These noises can be heard for up to 3 kilometers, and they're very useful because they help us keep in contact with each other even when we're spread out across the desert. Another important adaptation that we have is our large ears. They give us very good hearing, and they help us keep cool by getting rid of excess body heat. Our ears play an important part in maintaining homeostasis.
Wait a minute, what's homeostasis?
That's a good question. Well, homeostasis is an organism's ability to regulate its internal conditions. One of the adaptations most important to our survival in the desert is our tough digestive systems. They help us digest the fibrous desert vegetation that would be very hard for other animals to process. We also get some of the water we need from the food we eat. Here's a few other African wild donkeys in their natural habitat in the deserts of East Africa.
So I guess you guys live in small groups.
Yes, like this one here. There are only a few animals in each group because the scarce resources act as a limiting factor.
Could you explain to me what a limiting factor is?
Well, a limiting factor is something that restrains the growth of a population. These wild donkeys here are grazing. It's very useful to them that they can get some of the water they need from eating because the deserts where we live get less than 7.8 inches of precipitation annually. We are herbivores that eat the grasses and shrubs that grow in the desert, such as the plants this wild donkey is feeding on. In the desert ecosystem, we are the primary consumers.
Well, what makes an animal a primary consumer?
Primary consumers are part of the trophic pyramid. Let me explain. In a trophic pyramid, there are always at least 3 sections called trophic levels. The first level is always made up of producers who make their own food, like plants. They get their energy from the sun. There are more organisms on this level than there are on any of the other levels. The next level up contains the primary consumers, like us African wild donkeys. All primary consumers are herbivores, and they get their energy from consuming producers. Secondary consumers are above the primary consumers in the trophic pyramid. Secondary consumers are predators that get their energy by feeding on herbivores.
So the energy gets transferred up the pyramid.
Exactly.
From all the things I've learned about your species, it seems like you're very well adapted to these deserts. Why aren't there more of you, though?
African wild donkeys are an endangered species, which means there aren't very many of us left, and we're almost extinct.
What happened?
Let me show you. Hundreds of years ago, African wild donkeys inhabited vast areas that spread from what is now Morocco to parts of the Arabian Peninsula. Also around this time, however, humans had begun to domesticate us and sometimes hunt us. Before long, the range of our species had shrunk to only eastern Africa. More recently, there has been an increased amount of civil unrest where we live, especially in Ethiopia and Somalia. This has led to more weapons being in circulation in both of these countries, resulting in our species being hunted at an increased rate. Competition with livestock in the region has also contributed to decreases in our populations. In the last 30 years, we have lost over 90% of our populations, and our range has been confined to small scattered areas spread across eastern Africa. Currently, there are less than 600 individuals in our species left in the wild.
Hasn't the world recognized that this is a problem?
Yes, the IUNC, or International Union for Conservation of Nature, has declared our species critically endangered, which is one of the most serious stages on their scale.
If people know it's a problem, then what's being done about it?
Many things are being done to help our species. We are protected by law in several of the countries that we live in, even though those laws are hard to enforce due to our remote habitats and sometimes a lack of governmental structure. Also, there are many conservation efforts for the African wild donkey species in zoos, and in wildlife preserves such as the preserve Yod Vada Haibar in Israel. Another thing that's being done to help our species is the creation of conservation education programs in the areas where we live, such as the ones this group is participating in. These programs teach locals the importance of conserving endangered species such as ours.
Thanks for teaching me all about your species and about how important it is to conserve endangered animals.
No problem.
I promise us humans will do as much as we can to help your species.
I really appreciate that.
Alright, bye.
See ya.